We come to the fourth filter in the KLAIM model. KLAIM meaning knowledge, limitation, authority, interpretation, and mindset. And this is the fourth filter that we're going to talk about. This one's going to take just a touch longer than some of the others just because there's so much to it. So the idea that we interpret everything, in fact, one of my favorite sayings is that everything is interpretation, because even right now, as you're listening to my voice and you're watching me in this video, you're thinking to yourself, I'm watching this person, I'm hearing this voice, it's being interpreted through your brain. I want to help you to understand how that happens and maybe just give some examples of what this actually looks like in real life. So think about this oblong shape right here as the selection of our knowledge. So our information, our knowledge base, the journals that we go to look at, the books that we see in the library, whatever the case might be, this is our selection base. We've accumulated all of these ideas and all of these books. In my case, for instance, in my library, I have 5,000 volumes. So I have a large selection, but here's the other thing. As soon as you make a selection, you've also made a rejection. So I may buy a book, I may ask a publisher to send me a book so I can review the book, but then I've also rejected other books simply by not choosing them. So selection is the choices we make about the knowledge and information that we want, and then rejection is not choosing the other thing, whatever that other thing might be. So what happens next? If you take this long tube looking item right here and you put our eyes, or us, as we look down this tube, so we're literally looking through this narrow lens. We look through this lens, this is the interpretation process. We're actually thinking to ourselves, how do I consider all of the knowledge that I have right here? But the problem is that our interpretation is limited. Notice that I've kind of X'd off this little red section right here. So you may look down this tube and you may see for yourself, oh, this is what I'm seeing right now. I'm thinking about this particular piece of knowledge. But quite frankly, you're only interpreting a small part of that knowledge. So you see where this is going. Think about it from a nightly news broadcast standpoint. Let's say, for instance, there's a news program, and I know that many of you probably don't even watch this stuff, but there might be a 30-minute episode of news. Well, with all the commercials and all of the beginning and the end and all of that, you might get maybe 20, 21 minutes of news. Ask yourself the question, can that news be universal? Can we get every single thing that happened throughout the world in 20, 21 minutes? Well, obviously not. That's ridiculous. And then beyond that, you have a newscaster. So you have somebody at ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. You have somebody at Yahoo News, or somebody who's at Slate or Huffington Post, wherever the case might be. Somebody is choosing what they want you to know about, and then they're interpreting their own choice. So think about that. Not only are they choosing the information you get, but they're going to interpret the information that you get. But that's not all. What's really fascinating about this is that when you stop to consider, where does our selection come from? So again, back to our news example. Let's say that you're looking at Yahoo News or Huffington Post or Slate or Salon. Somebody has owned this particular selection. That is, there's an origination to the selection. So you've got somebody choosing, somebody rejecting, somebody's interpreting the selection, and then all of this knowledge came from someplace. And here is the real kicker to all of this. Look at some of these names. Think about Jeff Bezos. What does Jeff Bezos own besides Amazon? He purchased the Washington Post, which is a major news organ on the East Coast and, of course, throughout the world. It is one of those news papers that is highly regarded and highly respected. Guess who owns it? Jeff Bezos. Do you think that might make a difference in how WAPO actually gets their news across? Think about that for a minute. Think about Mark Benioff. Mark Benioff, internet mogul, worth like $4 or $5 billion. He's an amazing person, owned Salesforce for some time. He now owns the Time magazine. He chose to own Time magazine so that he could give it its own opportunity to be a trustworthy organ of information. As soon as I hear that from somebody, I have to ask myself the question, who said it, why did they say it, and who owns it? And if Mark Benioff is saying he owns it and he's giving Time trust, who's really in charge of this thing anyway? He says it's hands off. Well, maybe so. But my point being, he owns it. And that means that he's going to have a specific concern about it. And then, of course, the widow of Steve Jobs owns a large section of the Atlantic. So I'm asking you the question, do you think that knowing where this information comes from Washington Post, Time, or Atlantic, does that make a difference if you know who owns it? I'm hoping that you're shaking your head up and down saying yes. My point in saying all of this is a filter, and this is a huge filter. We use it all the time, but quite frankly, we don't really think about all the aspects of how we interpret. But this is a huge, important issue when it comes to thinking about the kinds of things that we do in any kind of discipline. It doesn't matter what it is or any kind of class that we're taking. So think about that. Next time that you're organizing a paper or writing a paper, consider how you are interpreting the knowledge that's being selected.